Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now let's begin. My name's Troy Lancaster. I'm 26 and I work the midnight shift at the 7-Eleven off exit 19 on I-40 just outside Knoxville. Nights out there stretch long. Sometimes it's dead quiet. Just the buzz of the espresso machine, the drone of fluorescent lights, and that constant low roar of semis drifting by on the interstate. Other nights the air feels heavier, like the walls are holding their breath. That Sunday night looked ordinary enough. I rolled in around 10:30, paid my tab for the coffee I'd already poured, emptied the trash, stocked the coolers, and tucked myself behind the counter. By midnight the place was calm. The usual crowd trickled through. Truckers with bleary eyes, night owls grabbing Red Bulls, a couple of locals snagging beef jerky or scratch-offs. I chatted a little, kept the register humming, sipped free coffee, and nodded off in the lulls. Then, at exactly 12:37, the door chime went off. A guy in his mid-30s stepped inside. Carhartt jacket, jeans, empty hands, no cap, no gloves, nothing to set him apart except for how slow he moved. His steps weren't casual, though. They were deliberate. He walked the aisles without touching a single thing, pausing under each security camera like he wanted to be seen. Then he turned and left. No purchase, no eye contact, nothing. I brushed it off. I'd seen stranger things on the night shift. At 1:04 the bell rang again. Same man. He walked right up to the counter this time. "Bathroom?" he asked, voice low, steady. "Sure," I said, pressing the buzzer. He nodded once. "Thanks." He disappeared down the hallway, closed the door, and I heard the latch click. That was it. No alarm bells in my head. Just another customer using the restroom. I stayed busy, wiping down the counter, rotating chip bags, polishing the glass cases. The fluorescent hum became a lullaby, steady and hypnotic. But after 5 minutes, the restroom light was still on. Then 10, then 20. The store grew quiet. No customers. Just the HVAC rattling overhead and my pulse thudding louder than it should. I kept glancing at the hallway. Door closed. No sound. Then, at 1:50, the bell rang again. I nearly jumped out of my skin. A Tennessee State Trooper stepped inside, uniform crisp, face tired. He nodded, already moving toward the coffee machine. "Evenin'," I said, trying to sound casual. I jerked my chin toward the hall. "Guy's been in there since about 1:04. The trooper froze, then looked at me. "That right?" I nodded. He walked over with that calm authority cops carry like body armor. No weapon drawn, just presence. He knocked on the door. "Sir, you all right in there?" Silence. I offered him the store keys. "You want me to?" He shook his head. "Stay here." He keyed his mic. "Need assistance at exit 19, possible suspect." Then to me, firm, "Son, stay outside with me." A few minutes later, another cruiser pulled up. They used the master key. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Empty. No man. No sound. Just a single paper towel on the tile floor. I saw the trooper's expression shift, subtle but sharp. He tilted his head back, scanning the ceiling. One of the white tiles was shifted, cracked slightly at the corner. "Back up," he told me, hand on his radio. Within 10 minutes, the place was lit up red and blue, glass flashing, ceiling washed in beams of light. One of the officers jabbed the shifted tile with a baton. There was a sudden scuffle above, quick and desperate. Then, silence. A man tumbled down, hitting the floor hard. His clothes were dusty, his breathing fast, his eyes wide. They dragged him upright. He had a backpack full of stolen IDs, gloves, rope, and a hunting knife. I found out later he had a warrant for violent home invasion. I sat down behind the counter, mouth dry, staring at the space above the restroom. That man had been crouched right above me for over an hour, listening, waiting. The next morning, I told management I wanted off nights. Didn't matter about pay, didn't matter about coffee, I wanted daylight, and the kind of sleep that doesn't come with shadows pressing on your chest. Even now, the faintest thump in the stockroom or a tap above makes my stomach knot. The flicker of lights makes me look up at the ceiling tile, checking, always checking. Because the worst fear isn't what might come in through the door. It's realizing someone's already inside. The days after felt like limbo. The world kept moving, but I was stuck replaying it all. I couldn't ignore how close he'd been. Rope, IDs, knife. Waiting in the dark, just a thin tile separating us. Did he plan to come down on me? Or just watch until I left? I'll never know. I started sleeping with the nightlight on, chair wedged against the bedroom door, bathroom locked. Thunderstorms had me flipping every light in the house. I'd scanned corners twice before I climbed into bed. And still, every shadow bent itself into the shape of a crouched figure, waiting. Across town, the other 7-Elevens kept on. Drug deals at dawn, brazen robberies mid-afternoon. Life rolled forward, but something in me had cracked. One rough afternoon after my new day shift, I stopped at a buddy's house. Sean's been in law enforcement for years, part-time K-9 handler, the kind of guy who doesn't scare easy. I think I went there because I needed to be around someone who could still breathe easy in the dark. I asked Sean one night if cops ever bother to check ceilings. Not unless there's a tip about surveillance or trafficking, he said, giving me a side-eye like he already knew why I was asking. Ceilings in attics? Pretty rare. Most break-ins happen through doors or windows. That's why your story's strange. I nodded. Strange or not, it happened. A man tucked into the ceiling above me, waiting for midnight. I couldn't shake the thought. The idea of someone wedged up there, silent, thrilled by not being noticed. Everyone who comes in my store usually sees me. Sometimes kids even point me out to their parents. But him? He chose me because I was easy to watch. He chose that 7-Eleven because the old building had blind spots, because it sat just off the highway, a place where no one stays too long. I should have felt safer that far from the city center. Instead, I felt like a sitting duck. That night I dreamed he was still up there, swinging in a makeshift hammock between the beams, breathing quietly while I worked below. I woke up gasping and flipped on every light in my apartment. I checked each ceiling tile before the sun even crept through the blinds. Weeks passed. Nothing. No noises above my new place, no unfamiliar cars lurking outside. But the rustle never left my head. It was like I carried a shadow around. One evening I drove past the old 7-Eleven off the interstate, the store where it all happened. I slowed, pulled into the lot and just stared at it. Neon glowing, glass reflecting headlights, looking like it hadn't skipped a beat. I thought about going inside for coffee, but the moment I imagined stepping through those doors, my stomach turned. I pulled back out without leaving the car. The police filed a report, of course. The trooper told me flat out, he won't come back where he knows cops responded. I wanted to believe him. But words like that don't hold much weight when there's no detective assigned, no one combing through leads. They said he was probably a transient, maybe homeless, targeting roadside places for easy access. Maybe, but I couldn't stop wondering. Where would he go next? I tried therapy. Talking helped a little, but I still flinched at sudden noises. I started carrying pepper spray in my pocket, flashlight in my glove box. I swapped the locks at my apartment and joined a gym, convincing myself a squat rack could make me harder to break. That became my identity. Troy Lancaster, 26, former night clerk, living like a walking security system. Then one afternoon, Sean called. His voice was tense. Someone broke into the 7-Eleven on Maywood Avenue. Same setup, no clerk inside. They never left the back room. Cops found movement in the ceiling above the bathroom, but he climbed out before they got him. The words made my hands shake. That night I typed up a warning in the local convenience store workers' Facebook group. Told them about the ceiling, about how he hid. Nobody replied. No likes, no comments. Either they thought I was exaggerating or they didn't want to face the idea. Maybe both. Still, I knew the truth. Cops can't cover every store. He could pick his spot. One of those older shops with drop ceilings and shadowy aisles where no one pays attention. I didn't want to go back, but part of me needed to. I called the detective on the Maywood case. No luck, no updates, no publicity, nothing to hold on to. And something inside me snapped, not out of fear this time, but out of stubborn pride, out of anger. I drove back to the 7-Eleven off exit 19, daylight hours. I asked management if I could look around. I wanted to check the ceiling, the bathroom tiles, anything for proof. They agreed, as long as I was escorted, liability and all that. Sean came with me. He brought his kit, powder, UV light, brushes. We climbed ladders, ran the lamp across ceiling edges, found a faint smudge on one of the tiles, right where it had been shifted before. Not a full print, but enough to prove he had been there. That night I sat in my car across the street, headlights off, just watching the building glow under its benzene-powered lights. No customers, no chime, no movement, just emptiness. And that's when it clicked. My fear wasn't the cause, it was the result. I was afraid because I knew, because I had been inside his plan once, because knowledge spreads like infection, but maybe that knowledge could protect me. Now I work office hours, daylight. I still double-check locks, set alarms, wedge a chair under my doorknob at night. But I sleep. When I step into a gas station or a corner shop now, I see the people differently. I look at the ceiling tiles, the quiet restrooms, the dark corners, just in case. I'm not living in fear anymore. I'm living with awareness. Every once in a while, a photo of that old 7-Eleven pops up on a nostalgia feed. Neon sign buzzing, storefront frozen in time. If I drive by, I can't help but glance at the roofline, at the smooth ceiling inside. And I wonder if someone could be up there again, crouched and waiting. Maybe it's paranoia. Maybe it's survival. Because you don't slip through a ceiling tile in silence unless you plan to stay hidden. I don't think I'm special. I don't think I'm braver than anyone else. But I know one thing. If even one clerk notices something off, a shifted tile, a restroom light that stays on too long, they might say something, they might save themselves. Paranoia spreads. So does awareness. And that can mean the difference between walking out alive or never walking out at all. The scariest threats aren't always the ones pounding on the door. Sometimes it's the ones already above your head, breathing quiet, waiting. You learn to trust the silence. You learn to react to the empty spaces because sometimes the safest thing you can do is notice what everyone else ignores. They say everyone has a point where silence shifts, where it stops being a blanket and starts feeling like a warning. For me, that moment came on a cold night in Flagstaff, Arizona. I was standing under the washed-out glow of buzzing fluorescent lights in the Clareton printing warehouse, the endless whir and hiss of paper presses filling the air like mechanical breathing. It was supposed to be routine, steady work, but that night, something changed. I wasn't always like this. Jumpy at every sound, constantly checking my phone, cataloging every exit in every room like a reflex. That version of me was new, carved out by months of small fractures I didn't notice until they ran too deep to ignore. After the breakup with Aaron, I didn't want explanations or a dragged-out fight about who kept the couch. I just wanted to vanish, leave no trace behind. I cashed out my vacation hours at the auto shop, and when I saw the posting for overnight maintenance at Clareton Printing Packaging, I grabbed it. It paid decently. The hours kept me away from people. Less conversation, less pity. That's all I wanted. Until I found out solitude can turn on you. The warehouse was enormous. 2 football fields of heavy machinery. Giant industrial printers clunked and hissed, their rhythms syncing together until the whole place felt alive, like a line of sleeping titans exhaling in their sleep. Every night at 2:45 I walked my route. Start in the break room, cut through shipping, loop back around the stairwells and catwalks, By the third week, the routine was second nature, almost soothing. Predictability has its comfort, but then came the calls. The first night my phone buzzed at 2:50 a.m. Unknown number. Just one ring, then silence. I let it go. Figured it was some wrong number or robocall. Second night, same time, same thing. A buzz, then nothing. I frowned, shut off my ringer. By the third night, I was more irritated than worried. That was the night I heard it. Right after the third ring faded, something metallic echoed below me. A soft click, the unmistakable sound of a door unlocking with a key. Then a short electronic beep like an access panel being overridden. My stomach went tight. Only 3 people had overnight clearance. Jake was in Vegas with his girlfriend. Carla was out on medical leave after a bad fall near the dock. That left me. Just me. I swallowed hard, grabbed my flashlight, told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe someone from the day shift left a door unlocked. Maybe security had popped by. But when I made it to the side stairwell, the one I personally locked every night at midnight, the door was cracked open. Just an inch, but enough. And I wasn't alone. He stood there halfway down the stairs. A silhouette. Tall, broad-shouldered, unmoving. Like he'd been waiting long before I arrived. The emergency light caught on something in his right hand. Small and sharp, glinting once. A box cutter. Not much steel, but enough to open a throat. I didn't run. I wanted to. Every muscle screamed for me to bolt. But some part of me knew sudden movements would make me pray. So I forced my legs to back up slowly, keeping my eyes locked on the figure. Step by step until I slipped behind the side office door. My hands shook so hard I fumbled my phone twice before finally dialing. 911. What's your emergency? There's someone inside, I whispered, my throat dry. Claritin printing, warehouse floor, he's armed, not supposed to be here. The dispatcher kept her voice steady, calm, told me to stay on the line, to keep breathing. Officers are on their way. Stay where you are. Do not engage. I stared at the grainy black and white monitor above the desk, the one pointed at the stairwell hallway. The feed showed nothing, just empty space, the stairwell door shut. No movement, no man. By the time the cops arrived, 4 cruisers and an unmarked, they swept every floor, every catwalk, every dock. Radios crackled, boots echoed in the cavernous halls. But the man was gone. Not a trace. And I was left with silence again. Only this time it didn't feel like comfort. It felt like someone breathing just out of view. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Doors were locked, supplies accounted for, no alarms tripped. I began to wonder if I'd imagined the whole thing, until they opened the janitor's closet on the 2nd floor. The door creaked as it swung, and there it was, a black duffel bag shoved beneath a mop bucket and a stack of sealed rags. I stepped closer, the smell of disinfectant sharp in my nose, and stared. Inside were rolls of duct tape, coiled rope, a pair of latex gloves, a burner phone with no contacts, and a key card that didn't register anywhere in the system. The strangest part? Whoever had left it here hadn't touched the printers, the control panels, the warehouse equipment at all. The cameras, sparse as they were, only showed him arriving from the back lot at 2:41 a.m., swiping in like he belonged. Then he just waited. Not for me specifically, maybe, but for someone. The thought hit me like a punch. What if I had answered that first call? My stomach churned just thinking about it. I didn't sleep the next day. I stayed in bed, blinds drawn tight, letting the faint daylight leak around the edges like guilt itself was creeping in. The police ran the key card, nothing. The burner phone, wiped clean. I told them about the calls, the beep, the figure on the stairs. They nodded, scribbled notes, promised to increase patrols around the warehouse. That was it. No license plates traced, no face matched, no resolution. Back at work the following night, every shadow seemed to watch me. Every flicker in the fluorescent lights, every clunk of machinery felt personal. I kept thinking about that bag in the closet, about the knife, and what could have happened if I'd been the one there alone when he waited. My hands itched to quit, and that night I tried. In the shift manager's office, I said, "I can't do this anymore. Not nights." Jerry, the closest thing the place had to a boss after midnight, just sipped his coffee unbothered. "Finish out the week. We're short-staffed. You'll be fine, kid." I wasn't fine. 3 nights later, it happened again. Same time, same number. This time I answered. Silence. Just slow, steady breathing, then a click, and the line went dead. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my gear, muttered to Jerry that I was sick, and walked out. Didn't clock out, didn't look back. The police never followed up. The file went cold. No leads, no break-ins, no stolen equipment. Technically, no crime. Just a man with a knife entering a building he shouldn't have. I moved across town into a small studio apartment, took a daytime delivery job for a logistics startup. Anything to avoid night shifts, stairwells, empty hallways. Still, sometimes I'd catch myself staring at shadows, thinking, he could be there. Months passed, no calls. But occasionally a voicemail would appear, blank, time-stamped between 2:40 and 2:55 a.m. Static filling the recording. No number. I changed phones twice. Still. I reached out to Jake, the guy from Clariton who had been in Vegas that night. "They never found out who accessed the building," he said. "Badge deactivated quietly. Probably just a contractor glitch. Cameras barely upgraded after that. You know how cheap they are." I asked if anyone had seen him again. He paused. "No. But Carla said she spotted someone in the lot a few weeks back. Looked like a janitor. Standing there, didn't carry anything." That was enough. Almost a year has passed. I don't work nights. I avoid stairwells. I don't answer blocked numbers. Yet, every few weeks I check the call log, just in case. 2:50 a.m., always around the same time. People tell me I'm paranoid. They weren't there. They didn't hear that metallic click. They didn't see the silhouette waiting. Therapy helped, but not enough. There's no label for what happened. No name for a man who doesn't steal, doesn't speak, leaves no prints. He wasn't trying to get in, he was already inside. I've learned to trust my gut. Doors left unlocked, I leave. Calls that feel off, I ignore. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe just static. Or maybe someone is watching, waiting to see who will answer. The truth is, danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it doesn't kick in a door or scream. Sometimes it waits for the third ring to fade. Pay attention to that instinct. The quiet flicker of a hallway light, the missed call, the slightly ajar door. They carry the weight of real threat. Don't dismiss what feels wrong just because it doesn't make sense. Listen. That whisper in your gut may be the only warning you get. You learn things working the night shift on a highway in Montana. Things you never thought mattered until you started listening. Like the soft, hollow sound of snow when it lands on the tin roof above you. Not just a sound, more like a sigh. A reminder that the world is still moving even when no one else is around. You learn how truckers smell different before and after their 5th cup of burnt coffee, sour sweat and diesel giving way to bitter caffeine breath. And you learn how silence feels heavier the farther you get from help, pressing against your chest until even your own heartbeat sounds suspicious. I wasn't always like this. I didn't used to jump at headlights cutting through the storm, or keep one hand resting under the counter where I hid the emergency flashlight just in case. But people don't come to Ridgeway Fuel Diner for comfort. They come because they've run out of choices. Dead gas tank, long haul, bad weather. Sometimes all three. Ridgeway sat 20 miles from the next pump in either direction on I-90, a half step away from nowhere. And that was exactly why I took the job. After my brother's accident, The kind of accident that stops your whole world while the rest of it keeps spinning. I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere no one asked questions. Ridgeway was perfect for that. A tired little diner, 4 fuel pumps, a convenience store with flickering fluorescents, and a coffee machine that groaned, but never brewed right. My shift was overnight, just me and Brianna, the short-order cook who'd been here longer than the cracked linoleum. It was early January, temperature hovering around freezing, a Sunday night so empty even the coyotes gave up. I sat behind the counter, sipping coffee that tasted like rust, watching snow drag itself across the lot like dry sand in the wind. The register clock blinked 1:10 a.m. when a red pickup rolled in. They didn't hurry. 2 men climbed out, one tall with a buzz cut and hands like steel cables, the other short and wiry, moving quick but without ever looking rushed. They parked by the diesel pump, didn't touch the hose, just walked inside. The bell above the door gave a weak jingle. They didn't greet me, just drifted through the aisles, touching things without buying, like they were waiting for something unseen. The wiry one picked up a candy bar, turned it over in his hand, then set it back down. The tall one stared at me, not casually, not curious, just staring. His eyes hung on me long enough for my stomach to twist. That old gut feeling you get when you step onto a bridge and suddenly don't trust the boards under your feet. After 10 long minutes, they walked out. Or at least, I thought they had. I bent down behind the counter, pretending to straighten the jerky display when the bell jingled again. The wiry one came back alone. His boots tracked melting snow into the store. "Our truck's dead," he said, flat, like he just remembered. "Buddy's checking the hood. Mind if I wait inside?" I looked at him, then at the snow outside, falling hard, sideways, mean. I wanted to say yes. That's what you do out here. You help people. But something in me rose up. It wasn't fear, not exactly. More like a quiet warning bell in the back of my skull. "Sorry," I said, keeping my voice even. "Policy says no waiting unless you're buying something." He smiled like he got it, like it was no problem. But his eyes flickered, just for a second, like a dog baring teeth before it snaps. Then he turned and left. The door shut, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. That's when I heard it, a whisper. "Hey." I turned. Brianna was standing in the kitchen doorway, pale, eyes wide, her apron twisted in her hands. She motioned me over. I slipped into the kitchen and pulled the door shut behind me. "I heard them," she whispered, her voice sharp with fear. "Out by the vent. They were talking about you. One of them said they'd drag the kid out back if he didn't play nice." I didn't ask how she heard it. I didn't need to. I locked the front door from behind the counter, hit the silent alarm under the register, then followed Brianna through the greasy kitchen, past the hissing griddle, and into the back hallway. Our shoes squeaked against the tile as we hurried. We pushed through the freezer's service exit into the storm, hearts pounding, breath burning in the cold. Behind us, the diner's glass rattled with the sound of fists hammering against it. The cold hit my face like a slap, sharp enough to sting my eyes. Brianna and I ducked behind the dumpsters by the rear fence, trying to breathe quietly. From where I crouched, I could still see their truck, red paint, engine quiet, parked neat by the pump. Not a trace of snow on the hood. They hadn't even tried to pretend it was broken down. Then I saw them. Both men. The short one prowled the lot, cutting back and forth, tapping on the windows like he was testing for weak spots. The tall one moved slower, steadier, and in his hand now was something long and metallic. A tire iron. He jammed it against the side door. The lock rattled but held. Brianna's fingers dug into my sleeve, her breath puffing white in the air. "I've seen guys like this before," she whispered, voice shaking but certain. "Not here. Fargo. My parents ran a bar. One night a guy came in, smiled like he was everybody's friend. He killed the bartender in the alley before anyone knew he was trouble." I didn't answer. Couldn't. My pulse was hammering so hard I thought the sound alone would give us away. The cold didn't touch me anymore. All I felt was that rhythm of fear, hot and loud in my chest. And then, headlights. Not the truck. A cruiser. Red and blue lights swept across the snow, painting the parking lot like a crime scene before the crime had a chance to happen. The two men didn't panic, didn't run. They just strolled back to their pickup, slow and casual, as if nothing was out of place. Calm as Sunday morning. They climbed in, started the engine, and rolled away down the white road. No plates, no rear lights, just gone. By the time the cops stepped out, the truck had vanished into the snow. The days that followed blurred together. Statements, photo lineups, the silent nods of a detective with a salt and pepper mustache who spoke more with his eyes than his mouth. They never caught the men. But 3 days later, that detective came back with stills from a surveillance tape in Wyoming. Two men, red pickup, same builds, different hoodies. He slid the printout across the table toward me. "That clerk," he said flat, tapping the photo. Door kicked in. Blood on the floor. Didn't show up for his next shift. They found him out back. My stomach turned cold. I didn't need the picture, but I couldn't stop staring at it. "They wait for the green light," the detective said. "They like spots like this. Isolated. They work in pairs. One distracts, the other." He didn't finish. Didn't have to. Brianna didn't come back to work for a week. When she finally did, she didn't say anything at first, just gave me a look. Not the kind coworkers share. Something heavier. The look of people who'd been through something together and knew it. Survivors. After that night, I started making changes. My phone stayed on vibrate, always in reach. The emergency flashlight under the counter, close enough to grab without looking. The back and side doors double-checked, propped only the way I trusted them. One night, a tourist knocked after hours, desperate to use the bathroom. I didn't open. He got mad, called me paranoid through the glass. Maybe I am paranoid, or maybe I'm alive because of it. People ask why I still work here, why I didn't take one of the offers. Better pay, day shifts somewhere closer to town, closer to people, closer to cell service that doesn't flicker like a dying bulb. I don't tell them the full truth. But the truth is, there's something about standing your ground in a place like this, about staring into the dark and refusing to move. I know Ridgeway now. I know the way the shadows fall at 2 in the morning. I know which plows come first at dawn. I know the difference between someone who's tired and someone who's waiting for a chance. And I know evil doesn't come wearing a mask. It doesn't announce itself with snarls or weapons held high. Sometimes it walks in, smiles politely, and lingers too long in the candy aisle. So I added another silent alarm near the register. Bolted the side door myself. Management didn't care, but I did. Out here, where the world narrows to snow and silence, one bad decision isn't just a mistake. It's an obituary waiting for a name. Always trust your gut. Out here, there's no backup, no crowd, no safety net. When something feels wrong, when your insides whisper, no, it's not nerves. It's survival. Because sometimes, the only thing between you and the dark is that stubborn little voice that says, not tonight. When you work the graveyard shift at a 24-hour burger joint, you see a side of the world that most people never witness. It's not just quieter, it feels thinner, like reality itself loosens after 2 in the morning. Time drags. The fluorescent lights buzz so loud you swear they're whispering, and the air always carries that stubborn mix of old fryer grease and something heavier, like exhaustion and regret. I was 20 when I landed the job at Burger Box 24, Yakima's most questionable last-chance stop for food at the edge of town. I was living in a basement rental then, no windows, no plans for college. Just grinding for cash to fix my busted car and maybe upgrade to a place where sunlight could actually find me. Night suited me, though. I liked the absence of people. Less drama, less noise. I liked the rhythm of the work. The sizzle of nuggets hitting the fryer, the robotic swipe of the rag on stainless counters, the way I'd call out Order 42 to an empty dining room just to hear a voice in the air. We had our regulars, Vic the trucker, who lived on double hash rounds, the ER nurse who shuffled in after 12-hour shifts with hollow eyes and a black coffee order, the drunk frat kids slurring their way through demands for free fries. But my favorite stretch was always between 2:30 and 4 a.m., that dead zone. No cars, no grill tickets, just the low hum of the freezer, the mop gliding sticky over tile, and the kind of silence that pressed down like a blanket. That Tuesday night started like any other. Midnight punch-in, apron tied tight, fryer switched on. My co-worker Andre handled prep in the back, though handled is generous. He mostly leaned against the counter with earbuds jammed in, laughing at YouTube clips only he could hear. Around 2:45, he shuffled outside for a smoke, muttering something about the snow picking up again. At 3:04, the drive-through buzzer went off. I flinched. The sudden noise against all that silence felt like someone clapping behind me. I leaned into the mic, voice steady out of habit. "Welcome to Burger Box, go ahead with your order." Silence. No reply. I glanced at the monitor above the register. The grainy black and white feed showed an empty lane. No headlights, no idling engine, just wet asphalt gleaming under our half-dead security lamp. Weird. Probably a glitch. Or maybe someone pulled in, chickened out, drove off. I shrugged it off, sipped the lukewarm Sprite I'd been nursing all night, and went back to scrubbing fingerprints off the counter. Then the buzzer went off again. I tapped the mic a little sharper this time. "Burger Box, you there?" Still no answer. I raised my eyes back to the monitor and froze. He was standing there, not in a car, not on a bike, just standing dead center in the lane, alone. The man wore a hoodie so soaked the fabric clung to his frame, the hood shadowing his face. His jeans hung heavy with water, darkened almost black. His arms dangled at his sides, limp, like they belonged to a puppet with the strings cut. The yellowed lights overhead caught the wet sheen of his shoulders. I swallowed hard, throat dry. Sir, we can't serve walk-ups at the drive-thru. You'll have to come inside." Nothing. No nod, no shuffle. He didn't even twitch. Just stared, not at the window, but up at the camera. Right at it. Right at me. That's when the chill hit, like icy water running between my shoulder blades. He stepped forward once, slow, deliberate. His head tilted slightly, a crooked angle that made it clear this wasn't confusion. He wasn't lost. He was watching. I slid the drive-through window shut and locked it, my pulse thudding in my ears. I stared at the screen like if I looked long enough he might blur and vanish. After a few seconds, I forced myself to glance at the window itself. Nothing there. Empty. I whipped back to the monitor. Gone. The lane was bare. My body stood frozen while my brain scrambled for excuses. Some wasted guy on something. A prank. Some weirdo drifting through the night. But my gut knew better. That sharp, primal voice inside whispered one thing only. "You are not alone. You're being watched." I should have stayed put behind the counter, pretended it never happened. But fear makes you stupid. My hand went for the flashlight under the register. Before I could second-guess myself, I pushed open the side door and stepped into the freezing dark to check. I didn't head out front. Something in the air told me not to. Instead, I cut through the back hallway, past the dry storage shelves that smelled faintly of cardboard and onions until I reached the service exit. Snow was falling in lazy spirals now, settling on the back lot like powdered sugar, thin but enough to erase any sharp edges. That's when I noticed it. The back door, the one I always checked, the one I knew I had latched at the start of the shift, was cracked open. Not wide, maybe 3 inches. Just enough for the winter air to seep in, or something else. My throat tightened. I forced myself to step closer, flashlight shaking in my grip. No alarm had gone off, no signs of forced entry. But I knew. That door had been locked, I'd tugged at myself until it rattled. I pushed it open slowly, my light cutting across the snow. Nothing. No footprints, no shadow slipping away. But there, just outside on the concrete, I saw it. A scratch. Long and clean, running waist-height along the wall as if something metal had been dragged with purpose. Not a tire mark, not a scrape from moving equipment. Intentional. And just below it, on the frame of the door, was a greasy handprint. Fresh. Wet. The fingers splayed wide, like someone steadying themselves, not from melted snow. This was darker, smeared, oily, like whatever they had been holding left its mark too, the kind of stain you don't forget. My stomach turned. I slammed the door shut and locked it. Deadbolt, bar lock, every latch we had. My hands fumbled, but I made sure. I didn't care if it looked paranoid. I dialed the non-emergency number. The dispatcher answered in a flat, practiced tone, like she'd taken the same call 100 times before. I rattled it out. The buzzer, the man, the door, the handprint. My words felt too fast, almost desperate, but she just promised to send a patrol car. 15 minutes, maybe. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, and hung up. When Andre came back in around 3:30, shaking snow off his hoodie, he froze mid-step. He could smell the tension before I even said anything. "You good, bro?" he asked, pulling one earbud out. I didn't look at him. "Don't go out back." The officer rolled up at 3:48. No sirens, no headlights. Just a quiet car sliding into the lot. He was mid-30s maybe. Calm, steady voice. The kind that didn't rise or fall. He asked the right questions, the practiced ones, and I walked him through it all. Showed him the grainy footage. Led him out back so he could see the scratch and the greasy handprint with his own eyes. He studied it for a long moment, then shook his head. Whoever it was, they knew what they were doing. Didn't leave prints. Didn't force entry. I swallowed. "Has this happened before?" He hesitated. Just a second, but I caught it. "Not like this, but last month we had a break-in at a storage yard outside Toppenish. Same kind of thing. Camera caught a guy just standing, not moving, watching. Long time. That word, watching, hit harder than I wanted it to, because I already knew. Back inside, we slowed the security footage frame by frame. Together, we watched the hooded man finally turn and walk away. That's when we both noticed it. In his right hand, half hidden in the dark, something metallic. Long. Could have been a crowbar. A pipe. Something meant to pry, or smash, or worse. The officer wrote his report. Told me to be careful. That was all he could do. The next night, I called my manager and asked for day shifts. He didn't argue. It's been 6 months. I haven't worked a graveyard shift since. Daylight feels different now, warmer, safer in a way I never noticed before. Sometimes when I pass Burger Box, I glance at the back wall. They painted over the handprint, but I can still see it in my head. Clear as the night, it was fresh. And I still picture him, the way he stood in the drive-thru like time didn't matter, like he had all night to wait. 13 minutes of silence. No words, no threats, just waiting. People ask if I ever saw him again. I tell them no. But sometimes in my dreams the buzzer goes off. I wake with my chest tight, convinced I left a window unlocked. Now, whenever I close up, anywhere, I check the locks twice. I wedge a chair under the handle. I carry a flashlight in my car like it's some kind of shield, because I learned something that night. The worst ones don't need to break glass or kick down a door. They just wait for the moment you forget. Fear isn't weakness, it's a warning. A whisper that says, pay attention. Because the scariest threats aren't the ones that crash in loud. They're the ones that linger in silence, patient, watching, testing. And all it takes is one moment, one buzzer, one unlocked door, for everything to change. The second you tell yourself it's probably nothing, that's usually when it's already something. When you're 19, broke, and doing everything in your power to avoid moving in with yet another Kyle, you start scraping together side gigs that don't ask questions. Uber Eats was supposed to be a stopgap, nothing more. Easy money before community college in the fall. I told myself it was temporary, just a summer hustle. Late-night runs felt like the least painful option. No traffic, no customers trying to chat through half-open doors, just me, my playlist rattling my speakers, and the steady hum of a full tank carrying me through the dark back roads of Arkansas. 3 weeks in, I thought I'd seen it all. Gas stations lit up like tired sentinels, motels where the curtains never seemed to close, trailers with porch lights strung like weak halos. The strangest delivery before that night was a guy who tipped me in loose bullets and pocket lint. I told myself it was just Arkansas being Arkansas. That Saturday, I was coasting along the edges of Helena, moon bright, roads empty, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest until you start listening too hard to your own heartbeat. I just dropped off Taco Bell to a nurse pulling an overnight shift when the next ping lit up my screen. McDonald's. Big order. 5 items. High tip. Customer name. Mrs. Walker, 87. No message, no directions. Just the name. The address didn't ring a bell, but it was only 12 minutes off the highway. Easy money, I figured. I slid through the drive-thru, picked up the order, 2 quarter-pounders, fries, a McFlurry, and an apple pie, and let the GPS guide me. The city lights faded fast. Street lamps gave way to gravel, and the road narrowed between trees that leaned inward like they'd been waiting for me. No more houses, no more signs, just a strip of gray gravel stretching ahead, my headlights carving sickly pale slashes through the woods. It felt less like driving and more like being pulled deeper into something. 5 minutes in, I noticed my phone signal dropping. First 3 bars, then 2, then gone. No service. The GPS still insisted I was on track, but there were no driveways, no mailboxes, just darkness stitched with trees. Then, up ahead, a light. A single bulb hung from a frayed cord draped over a low branch, flickering in the wind like it couldn't decide if it was alive or dying. Beneath it, an old fence, rust-eaten, strangled by weeds. My phone chirped once before freezing on the screen. You've arrived. But there was no house, no porch, just that bulb, swinging gently, throwing shadows that looked like they wanted to crawl toward me. My engine idled while I stared at the clearing. My breath came shallow, too loud inside the car. I sat there for maybe half a minute, hands gripping the wheel, waiting for the map to reroute for something. But the little blue dot just sat there, blinking, like it was mocking me. I muttered under my breath, "Nope, no way." Maybe the pin was off. Maybe the real address was a mile down. I reached for my phone, but it was useless. No bars, no Wi-Fi, not even a flicker. That's when I heard it. Breathing, not mine. From outside, close. Ragged, uneven, 2 sets. One deeper, one whistling faintly through teeth. Then came the crunch, the slow, deliberate sound of someone stepping on dry leaves, breaking twigs underfoot. I froze, didn't move. My hand hovered over the gear shift, sweat slicking my palm. I tried not to look, but the silence pressed on me until I had to. I turned my head just enough. Nothing but trees pale in the headlights, but every nerve in my body screamed that I wasn't alone. My throat was dry as I whispered to myself, "Just leave the damn food." I reached across the seat, shoved the McDonald's bag out the passenger door, letting it thud against the gravel like an offering. Then, snap. A stick breaking, sharp, close. That was it. I slammed the car into reverse, foot crushing the gas. The tires spun, gravel spitting up in angry sprays. For a split second I thought I was stuck, that they'd get me before I could move. Then the wheels caught, jerking the car backward. I swerved, fishtailed, fought the wheel until I hit the bend and found the path back toward the highway. My hands shook so violently I almost lost control, but I kept going, eyes flicking again and again to the rear view. And that's when I saw him. A figure stepped out from the trees, tall, hunched in a hoodie, something long and metallic glinting in his hand. He didn't run, didn't yell, just stood there, half in the shadows, watching. That was all I needed. I didn't stop until I saw the neon glow of the BP sign off Highway 49, 10 miles of blind panic later. The gas station lights burned like a flare in the dark. I pulled in crooked, jumped out, sprinted inside so fast I nearly knocked over a rack of corn nuts. The clerk looked up, wiry guy with a silver beard and a sweat-stained Miller High Life hat. He didn't even look surprised, just squinted at me, then said, "Calm as hell. Let me guess. You went out to the Walker place." I blinked, still gasping for air. "What?" He tapped the counter with 2 fingers, like he'd done this before. "You're not the first delivery kid to come in here spooked. One fella came in barefoot once. Said he lost his shoes running." I shook my head, words tumbling out. There wasn't a house, just a clearing, a light hanging from a tree. The clerk nodded slowly, like I'd just given him the answer to a test he already knew by heart. "That's how it always is," the clerk said, leaning back on his stool like he'd been through this conversation a dozen times. "Nobody's lived out that way in years. Land's been in foreclosure since 2014. Nearest property line is a good half-mile past that tree line." I swallowed hard, palms still sweating. But there was an order. The name came up. Mrs. Walker, 87. I dropped food on the ground, and I heard them, breathing, and there was this figure. He had something in his hand, a crowbar maybe. The clerk didn't even blink. His eyes stayed steady like I'd confirmed something he already believed. Some people think it's a trap. Bunch of weird reports out there. Missing dogs, break-ins, cops called for disturbances. But no arrests. Nothing they can pin down. Whoever's out there, they're slippery. They vanish before anyone can prove a thing. My chest tightened. "Has anyone been hurt?" That's when he hesitated. A pause, small but heavy. Then he said, "Not yet, far as we know." The words sat between us and I didn't push. I just wanted to be anywhere else. I left the counter, walked back out under the buzzing BP lights, and called Uber support from the driver's seat. My fingers shook so badly I could barely press the numbers. When the rep answered, I tried to sound calm, but my voice cracked. I told her everything, the order, the address, the figure in the trees. She pulled up my log. Then, after a pause, said she couldn't find it. No trip by that name. Nothing under Mrs. Walker. Nothing even showing as canceled. Just gone. Like it never existed. That's when the bottom dropped out. I sat in my car until morning, doors locked, heart pounding so loud I could hear it over the highway noise. I couldn't bring myself to climb the stairs to my apartment. Couldn't sit in the dark. My nerves wouldn't let me. I just kept seeing the clearing, hearing that ragged breathing outside the glass, replaying the way the light bulb swayed even though the air was dead still. The next morning, I checked again. No trace in the logs. No ghost order. I even emailed Uber's internal support, hoping for some kind of technical explanation. Days later, I got their generic reply. "We're sorry we couldn't locate the trip associated with that name or address." Like I'd dreamed it. But I knew better. You don't imagine 2 different people exhaling within feet of your car. You don't hallucinate the specific crunch of twigs under boots. And you sure as hell don't make up the kind of fear that short-circuits your body, that tells you to run before you can even reason it out. A week later, I told a buddy from Helena. I expected him to laugh. He didn't. He just looked at me and said, "Some of those roads out there, you don't want to know who walks them after midnight. That was enough for me. I quit night shifts. Then I stopped taking rural orders altogether. Extra money wasn't worth it. But sometimes, usually late when I'm driving past those back roads, I think about the what-ifs. What if I'd stepped out? What if I'd gone looking for the house, told myself the GPS was just a little off? What if I'd knocked on some rotten door because I needed better signal? What if I'd waited 5 minutes longer? It's been a year now. I've got a warehouse job. Steady hours, bad coffee. The constant hum of fluorescent lights, but safe. Predictable. I still use delivery apps. I still drive at night sometimes, but never down gravel roads without lights. Never when my gut tells me something's wrong. Because here's what that night taught me. The map doesn't always tell the truth. Sometimes, it leads you exactly where someone wants you, where no one will hear you scream, where no one will come if you vanish. I looked it up later. That rusted fence, it was real. Walker property. But the last Mrs. Walker died in 2016. No kids, no relatives. The name on my app wasn't random. It was bait. And they didn't want the food. They wanted me, young, alone, off the grid, easy to disappear. They wanted me to hesitate, to step out, to give them the opening. Now, whenever I see a delivery driver pulled over on some back road, engine idling, I feel that cold weight in my chest. I want to warn them, scream it if I could. Trust your gut. Leave if it feels wrong. Don't wait. Don't check twice. Don't think the order's worth it. Because sometimes the danger isn't what you see. It's what's watching you just out of sight, waiting for the second you doubt yourself. And some people, some very real people, plan for that hesitation. They count on it. No tip is worth disappearing for. I used to love silence. That was the real reason I took house-sitting jobs. Not because I liked snooping around in other people's homes, but because leaving my own apartment behind gave me a kind of peace I couldn't get anywhere else. Silence gave me room to breathe, to think, to let my mind unclench. It gave me hours where I could work on my photography without the constant drone of sirens, honking, or neighbors fighting through thin walls. City life was like static, endless and buzzing. Out in the woods, though, it felt like someone had finally turned the volume down on the world. The lake house in Twin Pines was everything I thought I needed. The place was tucked away behind a winding gravel road, surrounded by a crown of tall pines that seemed to swallow up the noise of the outside world. It sat just above a lake so still it looked like a pane of glass, not even a ripple unless wind skimmed the surface. The house itself was 2 stories with wide, clean windows that made you feel like the trees were part of the living room. There was a wraparound deck with a hot tub that still smelled faintly of chlorine. Best of all, there was Bear, a golden retriever so perfect he could have been a stock photo, with fur like spun honey and that gentle, dopey look all retrievers seem to master. The owners, a retired couple, were heading to Hawaii for 2 weeks. All they asked was simple: water the succulents on the windowsill, feed Bear, and lock the doors at night. That was it. Easy money. They left on a Monday morning, and by Wednesday I'd already slipped into a rhythm. Wake up, feed Bear, leash him for a slow walk around the lake trail, snap some photos during golden hour, and then settle into the balcony at night with a cup of tea or a book. Bear never barked. Ever. He was the kind of dog who looked like he'd happily wag his tail for a burglar if they offered him half a sandwich. The only time he made a sound was when deer wandered too close to the yard. Then he'd lift his head, give a low huff through his nose, ears flicking forward like he was acknowledging their presence but couldn't be bothered to care. That third night, though, things were different. The air had gone cold, cooler than the nights before. Mist rolled across the lake like something alive, dragging itself along the water's surface. I was curled up on the balcony with chamomile tea, hoodie zipped to my chin, when Bear shifted beside me. At first I thought he was just stretching, but then he stiffened, ears pinned back. At exactly 12:28 a.m., he stood, turned toward the sliding glass door behind me, and let out a low, steady growl. Not a bark, a growl. His whole body was tight, head lowered, eyes locked. I turned slowly, pulse already kicking up in my chest. In the reflection of the glass, all I saw was myself, my face faintly lit by the kitchen lights behind me. Just me. But Bear didn't stop. "Bear," I whispered, my throat dry. "What is it, boy?" I tried to convince myself it was a raccoon, maybe a coyote sniffing around the garbage bins. That would have made sense. I leaned closer, cupping my hands to block the glare from the light inside. But all I saw beyond the porch light was darkness. Trees swaying, silent, nothing moving. And then Bear bolted. It happened so fast it didn't feel real. The claws skittering across hardwood, the thump of his body rounding the corner as if something had yanked him. I jumped up, nearly spilling my tea, and ran after him, calling his name. He stopped dead in front of the hallway closet. His body was rigid, his teeth bared, a low rumble vibrating in his chest. My stomach turned to stone. That closet. I'd opened it earlier. Just coats, umbrellas, the vacuum cleaner. Completely ordinary. But now it felt like the air in the hallway had turned heavy, pressing in from all sides, like the house itself was holding its breath. Bear didn't bark, didn't whine, just that growl, steady and low, as if he was warning me not to go any closer, and I should have listened. Instead, I did the stupid thing. I leaned in, heart hammering so loud I could hear it in my ears. There was a tiny gap between the door and the frame, maybe an inch wide, enough to see inside. And in that inch, something stared back. Not an animal, not a shadow. Human eyes, flat, unblinking, and cold. They weren't surprised. They weren't afraid. They were just watching me, like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. I screamed so hard my throat tore raw, the sound bouncing back at me until my ears rang. Bear barked then, once, loud enough to shake the walls. I grabbed his collar with both hands, dragging him backward down the hall even as he fought to stay. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely unlock my phone, nearly dropping it twice before I hit 911. I shoved the dresser from the guest room against my bedroom door with everything I had left in me, chest heaving, and jammed a chair under the knob for good measure. Bear sat pressed against me, hackles raised, ears twitching toward the hallway, growling in that same low, endless tone, like the thing in the closet hadn't moved an inch. The dispatcher answered, calm and steady. She kept me talking, told me to stay hidden, to breathe, that help was only 8 minutes away. 8 minutes. I remember because I couldn't stop staring at the clock on the wall, counting each second tick by tick, as if my life depended on it. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a footstep. Every gust of wind rattling against the siding made my blood turn to ice. I kept Bear pressed against my leg, my hand wrapped tight around his collar as if that thin grip could hold back whoever, or whatever, might come crashing through the walls. 8 minutes. The dispatcher had promised me 8 minutes, but it stretched out, slow and heavy, like an hour I wasn't sure I'd survive. When the knock finally came at the front door, sharp and deliberate, followed by a steady voice calling, "Sheriff's office." I nearly collapsed from the sound of it. My chest seized, but I ran. Shoved the dresser aside with both hands, the weight of it clattering to the floor as I bolted into the hallway. My voice shook as I called out, "Back here." 2 deputies moved fast, professional but calm, clearing each space as they went. Closet first, the same one where I'd seen those eyes. Empty. Then the attic. Then the crawl space. Nothing. No broken locks. No splintered door frames. Every window sealed tight. It didn't make sense, and the longer they searched, the more insane I started to feel, like maybe I had imagined it all. Until one of them stepped onto the back deck. "Ma'am, you might want to see this." I followed him out, Bear glued to my side, still on edge. In the bushes beneath the balcony lay a small scatter of debris, greasy fast food wrappers, a used water bottle with teeth marks on the cap, and a crumpled sleeping bag half buried under pine needles. Next to it, glinting under the deputy's flashlight, was a laminated delivery badge. I leaned in. The name was smeared into nothing, but the photo was sharp. Mid-30s, pale, narrow face, thinning hair. I knew the company instantly. I'd used them dozens of times. The deputy exhaled. "He's been missing since January. Walked off his route one night and never clocked back in." He stopped himself, glanced at me, and didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. The man hadn't broken in. He'd already been there. Living inside the house, probably slipping between the crawl space and attic, Maybe even creeping down at night to eat leftovers, drink water, stretch his legs. The strangest part? Nothing was stolen. Not a single item. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about harm. Not yet. It was about being close. That realization hollowed me out. The thought that while I showered, he might have been crouched on the other side of the wall. While I slept, he could have been curled in the rafters above my bed, listening to the rise and fall of my breathing. And Bear had known. That first night, when he whined at the kitchen door, I'd brushed it off as a squirrel. The second night, when he paced the hall before finally curling at my feet, I thought he was restless, but he wasn't. He was warning me. Dogs don't second-guess themselves. They don't invent stories. They just know. I didn't go back after that night. I stayed with a friend in town, and when I needed my things, I sent someone else. Even walking up that driveway made my skin prickle like I was stepping onto a grave. The owners cut their vacation short when they heard. They weren't surprised, just pale and shaken. We forgot to mention the attic hatch, the husband admitted quietly. We never used it, thought it was sealed. But the deputies had found disturbed dust near the edge, faint shoe prints if you looked close enough. I only looked once. That was enough. It took me months to sleep without triple-checking the closet doors. I still take house-sitting jobs sometimes, but only ones with cameras, bolted attic hatches, and neighbors close enough to hear me scream. I talk about that night less and less, not because it didn't happen, but because most people don't want to hear it. They'd rather believe stories like mine are just that, stories. Safer that way. But the truth? That man was never caught, never resurfaced. He just dissolved into nothing, like smoke carried off by the trees. Maybe he found another quiet house. Maybe he's still out there waiting for the next unlocked door. Sometimes late at night I still hear Bear's growl in my head. The way it was low, steady, certain. Not panicked, not frantic, just sure. He didn't need to see a knife or a face to know something was wrong. He felt it. Now, whenever Bear growls at the wind or stares too long at a corner, I listen. Always. Because once you've learned how easily someone can live inside your walls without you knowing, you don't unlearn it. You just check harder, sleep lighter, trust your instincts, trust your dog. Silence isn't safety. Sometimes it's the sound of something already inside, waiting. The first night on graveyard shift, everything seemed sharper, louder, like the whole world had turned up its volume just to see if I'd flinch. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, steady and nerve-grinding. Out on the highway, the occasional car whispered past, swallowed by the dark before I could blink twice. And inside, the lonely exit sign blinked its red reminder every few seconds, like it was mocking me for noticing. Mom made me promise I'd text her every hour. I thought it was overkill, but for the first few nights I obeyed. She worried, and I couldn't blame her. This was Mercer Falls, South Carolina, population too small to feel safe. Way station gas was the only thing open past 10, and here I was, 18 years old, working nights alone like it was no big deal. Mom had gone all out, bought me a phone holster, a tiny two-way radio, even the bulletproof glass barrier I stood behind now. She'd said, "Better safe than sorry." I'd rolled my eyes, kissed her cheek, and told her, "It's just coffee and chips, Mom. I got this." And for a while, I did. The first 5 nights blurred together, sweeping floors, scrubbing out the burnt smell from the coffee machines, cramming jerky sticks and energy drinks into the fridge. Midnight to dawn. One smoke at 1 o'clock, another at 3, out on the brake bench in the back lot. Every hour, a quick text to Mom. "I'm good." Then came shift number 6. At 12:00 sharp, I texted her. "Still awake." Quiet night. The store was empty, just me pacing across the linoleum, the sound of my own steps keeping me company. At 12:16, the black sedan pulled in. It glided up to pump 6, headlights slicing through the lot so clean it almost looked staged. I leaned closer to the monitor. A man got out. Hoodie zipped up tight, even though the night air was muggy, sticky with heat. He didn't touch the pump, just leaned against the car, staring straight at the store. Something in me locked up. I kept one eye on the monitor, my hand brushing the phone in my pocket. He stayed like that, motionless, almost statuesque, for 10 minutes. Didn't fidget, didn't look away, just stared, hunched in the shadow of the canopy. By then my breathing had gone shallow. Sweat gathered on the glass door, sliding down in streaks until it pooled at the floor. Then, without warning, he walked up. Too fast, too calm. I tightened my voice and called through the speaker. "Can I help you?" He tapped 2 fingers against the plexiglass. His voice was smooth, too smooth. "Speaker." Then, after a pause, "You working all night?" I nodded. My name tag just said Haley, no last name. He tilted his head and smiled like he knew something. "You look familiar. You go to Southern High?" My stomach dropped. I shook my head. "No, don't know you." But he nodded, confident. "Nah, I know you. You used to ride the bus down Chestnut, right?" Chestnut Drive, my old bus route. He didn't know my last name, but he knew enough. I slid one hand under the counter, my fingertips finding the panic button. "Stay calm. Stay quiet." He started moving around, took a sip from a soda he hadn't paid for, tossed the bottle on the counter, knocked on the restroom door, locked, checked the front windows, then slipped out of sight toward the side of the building. The lights went out. One sharp flicker and then total darkness, except for the steady red glow of the exit sign behind me. My throat locked up. No scream came, just the wild hammering of my heart. I shoved the side latch closed on the glass door, ducked down, and crawled behind the counter. Pulled my phone out. No signal. I bolted for the supply closet, yanked it open, and shut myself in, locking it from the inside. The air smelled like bleach and dust. I pressed my back against a crate of cleaner, shaking so hard my teeth clicked. My phone lit up the cramped space in a weak blue glow. I typed fast, 9:11. Then again, whispering as though the words themselves might leak out into the hall. "Help. I'm locked in. There's a man outside." Every breath sounded like thunder, every heartbeat like a drum, and I knew he was still out there. His footsteps were slow, deliberate, each one echoing through the hollow station like a warning. I could hear him sliding the shutters open on the windows, metal scraping against metal, sharp and grating. Then silence. A few seconds later, the faint crunch of shoes against concrete. The restroom lock groaned as he tested it again, the subtle creak crawling straight into my chest. I drew my legs tight to my chest, curling around a box of rubber gloves in the supply closet, trying to make myself small enough to disappear. 13 minutes passed like an eternity. My mom's voice played in my head, soft but insistent. "Text me every hour, Haley." I had already broken that promise by 20 minutes. Would she have known something was wrong? Would she have called someone? Then came the knock, not from him, from the front door. 2 deputies stood framed in the glass, their patrol car's lights pulsing blue and red across the dark store. Relief surged through me so violently I nearly sobbed. I waved frantically from behind the counter glass and called out, my voice shaking, "He's around back." I didn't even wait for them to motion. I shoved open the closet door and pointed, hands trembling. The officers moved fast, slipping inside, clearing the aisles with sharp commands and the snap-snap of flashlights cutting through shadow. Each cooler aisle, every dusty chip shelf, they checked them all. They didn't find him. Instead, they found his car. 2 miles down Old Mill Road, dumped like trash. A black sedan, plates stolen, no fingerprints, no trace of who had been inside. But on the ground near Pump 6 lay a cheap burner phone. The deputies showed me what was inside. Dozens of photos, shots of me outside my high school, pictures from the parking lot, my own house. My stomach lurched so hard I thought I'd throw up. For the next week, deputies circled me like vultures. Questions, interviews, timelines. I told them everything. The way he said chestnut, the smile that didn't reach his eyes, the eerie calm in his voice. They believed he'd been watching me for a while, maybe trailing me since school. The car plates had been swapped across counties, the burner phone traced back to a Walmart. Nothing solid, nothing to hold on to. He hadn't come to buy gas. He'd come for me. I quit before my next shift. The manager called, sounding half annoyed, half relieved when he said he'd found someone else to cover. But I knew I couldn't step back into that building again. Not with those windows. Not with those shadows. When I came home, Mom pulled me into her arms, holding me so tightly it hurt. I whispered into her shoulder, "I'll never miss a text again." And I meant it. Even something as small as a clogged bathroom drain would come with an update. Now, I work mornings at a bakery. The smell of bread, the warmth of ovens, people constantly moving in and out, sunlight streaming in through big glass windows. I need the light. I need voices around me. No more bulletproof glass. No more black sedans pulling into the lot at midnight. Still, when I stop for gas after dark, on trips, on errands, I always check. I scan the mirrors. I watch the pumps. I count the faces, glance at the glass doors, searching for a reflection I recognize. So far, nothing. Just strangers. But I don't sleep right anymore. My dreams flicker like faulty bulbs. I see that hoodie, that shadow leaning back with a smile like he knows me. Sometimes it's so real I wake up with my throat raw from holding back a scream. On nights when the unease crawls up my spine, I text Mom. One text, $30 of comfort. She doesn't ask questions. She just answers, "I love you." Because now I understand. A smile can be a mask. A friendly question can be bait. The danger doesn't always crash through doors. It waits. It waits for you to open them. It gathers pieces of you, the small details that feel harmless, until they're not. Your instincts will scream before your eyes can confirm, and if something feels too familiar, it's probably not safe. So now I trust the gut. I text the person who needs to know. I walk away, because hesitation is what predators count on. And curiosity? That can cost you a whole lot more than pride. I always believed the graveyard shift would feel calm, almost like a cocoon away from the noise of the day. I'm 23, tucked into a modest one-bedroom apartment in Albany, New York. Most nights I sit in front of the soft glow of my dual monitors, pajamas on, coffee within reach. By day I put on my armor, smiles, retail voice, the performance of functioning. But at night? At night, it's just me, my playlist, and Technova's remote support system. Password resets, activation errors, slow scans. From midnight to 6, I'm the disembodied voice reassuring strangers their files aren't gone forever. That Thursday was no different. I closed up at the store, grabbed leftovers from the fridge, and logged in by 11. The hours moved like they always did. Tickets resolved, polite thanks, system checks, all neat and orderly. Around 1:45 a.m., fatigue settled into me like a soft blanket, but I wasn't bothered. The coffee was still warm and the low hum of my playlist filled the silence. At 2:03 a.m., though, a chat box popped up. The word, help. Normal enough. But then came the actual message, "What color are your bedroom curtains?" I froze, staring at the screen. That wasn't in the script. I blinked, thinking maybe I misread. I scrolled up. Nothing else, just that single line, plain as day. My heart ticked louder in my chest. I typed back carefully, "Sorry, I can't help with that." Then closed the chat window. 30 seconds later, another chat appeared. "Why'd you change the lamp position near your desk? It was better on the right." My stomach twisted. The lamp, I'd moved it that morning, just a minor adjustment because the glare on my webcam annoyed me during video calls. I never mentioned it online, not to anyone. My gaze shot to the webcam, uncovered, staring back at me. My throat went dry. I didn't type a response. I slammed the chat closed, my hands trembling. Then my phone buzzed. A blocked number. I ignored it, but within moments a text appeared. "I'm outside your building. You looked scared just now." Every muscle in my body tightened. It felt like poison dripping into my veins. I snapped off the lights, the sudden blackness swallowing me. The monitors glared too bright, like beacons giving me away. Moving on autopilot, I crept to the window, yanking the blinds shut. My fingers shook so badly I almost dropped my phone while dialing 911. The dispatcher's voice steadied me just enough to answer their questions. Blocked number, anonymous chats. They promised officers were on the way. But until then, I was alone. My pulse was a runaway train. Every shadow outside my blinds seemed alive, moving. The knock came at 2:20 a.m. Albany PD, a voice called through the door. I hesitated, ear pressed against the wood. His tone sounded muffled, unreal, as though filtered through water. Slowly, I cracked the door. The night air spilled in, cool against my sweat-damp face. The street outside looked deserted, just the harsh glow of the lamp across the road illuminating empty asphalt. The officer stepped in, calm but cautious. In my living room, he tapped the blinds lightly. "We'll sweep the building. Could just be a prowler," he said, lowering his voice. "Not necessarily someone, you know." "Someone knows me," I whispered back. "The lamp, the curtains, those aren't random." He met my eyes, then asked permission to search. I nodded quickly, too rattled to argue. He and his partner combed through the hallway, checked the locks, tested the bolts. Everything held. No signs of forced entry. Outside, the pavement was clean. No footprints in the patch of dirt by the building. Nothing. But then he saw it, taped neatly to my front door. A full-color photo. It was me, sitting at my desk earlier that night. My face tilted toward the screen, the lamp casting even light across the frame. The shot was sharp, recent, and impossibly close. Taken from outside my second-story window. I screamed before I could stop myself. The officer's jaw tightened as he peeled it from the door, bagging it carefully. "We'll run prints, digital forensics too." I nodded, my shoulders trembling. His voice softened. "We take cyberstalking seriously." But I caught the hollowness in his tone, the sound of someone who couldn't promise safety, only paperwork. They left around 3:30 a.m. The apartment was still, save for the whispering hum of the cooling fan in my laptop. My thoughts spun, searching for explanations that only made the fear worse. Someone in the building? Someone who had cracked my Wi-Fi? Or someone right now, still outside, still watching? Sleep was impossible. Instead, I powered down everything. Laptop, router, all of it. I slid the webcam cover shut, suffocating the little red light until it disappeared. And then I sat in the silence, waiting for the dark to feel safe again. I texted my roommate, who was away for the weekend, begging them to come back or at least stay on the phone until sunrise. But sleep never came. I curled up on the couch instead, pulling my hoodie over my head like a shield, ears pressed down, eyes fixed on the door as though staring hard enough could keep it from opening. My mind replayed the day in sharp, jagged fragments. The support logs I reviewed, the tickets I escalated, the activation loop I fixed, the routine password resets. Nothing stood out, nothing personal. Yet somehow someone had been there, watching. And now it wasn't just a joke or a prank. It was real. By dawn, I couldn't take it anymore. I stuffed a few essentials into a backpack, my toothbrush, one change of clothes, and the $300 cash I had stashed away for emergencies. I scribbled a note, my hand trembling. I moved out. Don't come looking. Then I left. I knew better than to trust that the police could protect me from someone who had already slipped past every digital barrier I thought was secure. As I locked the door behind me, I shook, thinking of that photo taped to my door, the camera feeds I couldn't see, and the sickening sense that the story wasn't finished yet. I moved in with a friend across town, someone I trusted. I kept it professional, no details shared with anyone else. That night I quit. When my manager from Technova called the next morning, his voice careful, I just said, "I can't sleep knowing someone's watching me through my webcam. I'm sorry, I can't continue." He tried to sound sympathetic, promised they'd investigate, but admitted there was no policy covering anonymous chats. No way to trace a user masking their IP, no way to know who had reached me. That person could be anywhere. My friend drove me out for coffee, though my hands never left my phone, gripping it like a lifeline. At home, I kept the blinds drawn tight all week, lamps blazing even at night, doors locked and checked, then checked again. I slept in fragments, always waking at the faintest creak. Weeks passed. The police called with updates, useless ones. The webcam had been accessed through a MAC address spoof in my router logs. Whoever did it also spoofed my IP, covering their tracks. The photo? No fingerprints. The number that texted me? A burner. Long gone. There was nothing solid to follow. I responded the only way I knew how. By fortifying. Deadbolt always locked. A jammer wedged under the doorknob every night. A video doorbell drilled in, eyes pointing out instead of in. Every smart device unplugged. My apartment began to feel like a bunker, and I couldn't tell anymore where the real threat ended and my paranoia began. Except they blended so completely that both felt real. Over time, I managed to heal enough to work again. This time, daylight hours only. A help desk job in a co-working space where the sun cut through wide glass windows and the hum of people reminded me I wasn't alone. I was polite on calls, efficient, but I couldn't shake the need to check if the line was tapped. I reinstalled security software over and over as though each version could scrub away the memory. Every device, every account, layered with two-factor authentication and VPN tunnels. Webcams all covered. My living room turned into a fortress of deterrence. Bluetooth locks, encrypted mesh Wi-Fi, a router on auto reset every night. Blinds down, visitors announced and verified. Every day I posted check-ins, even public logs, just to leave a trail that someone, anyone, could follow. Months later, I learned something chilling. Someone in my old building had moved out suddenly. No forwarding address. Around the same time, everything happened. Neighbors whispered about a drifter, a man carrying laptops at night lingering around the complex's edges. No record, no ID, nothing concrete to hold on to. The police speculated, a hacker prowler, someone exploiting smart home spyware, routers left on default passwords, easy spoof accounts. Someone who started digitally, then crossed into the physical, lurking silent and invisible outside my window. It changed me. The lesson carved itself into my bones. Digital protection means nothing without physical security. I used to feel safe behind glass screens, behind firewalls and encryption, thinking I lived in an untouchable bubble. But now I know those barriers are illusions if someone decides to turn virtual breadcrumbs into real-world stalking. I sleep lighter, but at least I sleep. And this time, it's on my terms. I still do online support occasionally, but never from home after dark. Not anymore. Because security isn't optional, online or offline. We trust our platforms, our devices, our passwords, until the moment they betray us. And when they do, the strongest antivirus, the toughest encryption, won't matter if someone can slip through your curtains or stare through your webcam, cover your cameras, update your firmware, lock your doors, trust your gut. Because if someone already knows where your lamp is, they're not just inside your system, they're inside your life. I never planned on staying in Springfield. It was supposed to be nothing more than a stop on the map, a place with cheap gas, a couple of greasy diners, and enough blank space for me to vanish into. I had told myself I had a plan: keep my head down, scrape by with part-time shifts, and keep pushing west before winter locked everything in. But plans don't mean much after certain kinds of trauma. Not the kind that leaves bruises or visible scars, but the kind that makes people doubt you instead of believe you. Back in Illinois, I filed the report. Assault. Someone I knew. Someone other people trusted. At first, there were questions, forms, polite nods. Then too much silence. Too fast. Within weeks, the whole thing was closed, dropped, shelved, forgotten. And me? I became the girl who couldn't keep her story straight. But I hadn't changed a single detail. People just decided not to listen. And once that verdict is passed, the whispered disbelief, the shifting eyes, you're already done. So I packed what I could into a single bag, slid behind the wheel, and drove until the silence in my chest finally matched the emptiness of the highway outside my window. Springfield was where the last of my money bled out. That's how I ended up at Canyon Edge Motor Lodge. I found the flyer in a gas station window, wrinkled and curling at the corners. Help wanted, night shift cleaner. Light laundry, no guests to deal with. The kind of job that existed for people who didn't want to be noticed. Glenn, the manager, didn't bother with much of an interview. He squinted at my ID, muttered something about the last girl walking out mid-shift, and slapped a set of keys into my hand. The work was easy, almost mechanical. Mop the lobby, swap out towels, restock the vending machines with stale chips and off-brand soda, collect trash bags from the emptied rooms. I didn't have to sit behind a desk. I didn't have to meet anyone's eyes. Perfect. The first time I saw him was a Wednesday night. I was pushing my mop bucket down the hall outside room 9, the vending machine humming loud enough to cover the silence. He was leaning against the wall, hands sunk into his jacket pockets, gaze unfixed like he was waiting for nothing in particular. "Late night for both of us," he said. His voice carried the easy weight of someone who thought small talk was harmless. I gave him a tight nod, kept my bucket moving. I'd learned enough to know not to encourage conversations like that. The next night, he was there again. Same spot, same pose. Watching without really watching. "You always work this shift?" he asked, stepping half a pace closer. "Just helping out tonight," I lied. My voice was flat, rehearsed. He smiled, not leering, not aggressive, just casual, too casual, like we'd already shared a joke I didn't remember telling. Later that shift, I met her. She came up to me while I was kneeling beside the hallway cart, sliding fresh toilet paper rolls into place. Tall, blonde, dressed like she belonged in a conference hotel, not a roadside lodge. Her smile came easy, like it was second nature. "You okay working here?" she asked. I shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "It's a job." She tilted her head, lowering her voice. "Just asking because I've seen that guy watching you." She leaned in a little, her perfume faint, sharp. "He gives me the creeps." I glanced down the hall, but it was empty. She stuck out her hand like we were meeting at a coffee shop. "I'm Jenna," she said. "I work in wellness, retreats, trauma recovery, women's groups, yoga, stuff like that." There was no judgment in her tone, just this gentle certainty that unnerved me more than comforted me. "You look like someone who deserves more than this place." Then she leaned closer, her voice dropping. "Why don't you take a quick walk with me? My car's out back, no cameras there, just for a minute." She said she wanted to talk where the motel couldn't see us. The words slipped out casual, but they froze my skin. "I can't leave the building," I answered, keeping my voice as flat as I could. Her smile faltered too quickly. For a split second, her eyes hardened, sharp as glass, before softening again. Then she tilted her head and said something I still hear in my sleep. "You're not what I expected." Without another word, she turned and walked away, heels clicking down the hall like she'd rehearsed the exit. That was when I checked the cameras. Glenn's office had 4 old monitors, one for each hallway in the parking lot. I wasn't supposed to touch them, but he'd left the door cracked. The stale smell of cigarettes clung to the room. I slipped inside, pressed rewind, and stared. The footage wasn't grainy or hard to read. It was plain. At 10:30, the man and woman had walked in together side by side like co-workers heading to lunch. She went into room 9. He stayed behind, loitering near the vending machine, waiting for me to come by. The casualness of it, how practiced it looked, made my stomach clench. They'd done this before. And then, after I told her no, the feed stuttered. The back hallway camera glitched to static for just a few seconds. When it cleared, I caught someone rattling the staff-only door handle. Once, twice, then silence. I bolted to the laundry room, slammed the lock, and pressed my back against the machines until the hum of dryers drowned out my breath. My hand shook so badly I could barely text Glenn. "Someone's trying the back door. Something's wrong. Please come." He showed up in 6 minutes. I counted every one. The second his headlights swept across the lot, a dark sedan screeched out from behind the building, gravel scattering like sparks. They were together. They'd been waiting. The police came that night. 2 officers, calm voices, steady eyes. They listened while I told them everything. The man's questions, the woman's gentle manipulation, the footage of them arriving together. I braced for disbelief, but they didn't dismiss me. Turns out, similar calls had come from motels in 2 other towns up the same highway. Same man, same woman, targeting night staff, always women, always alone. They never stole money, never forced entry. They played patient, building trust, waiting for the moment someone slipped outside. One officer said quietly, "Could have been trafficking. If you'd gone with her, it might have been worse." They promised to log it, escalate it. Glenn let me clock out early. He didn't offer much, just my check folded in half and a gruff, "I'll get better locks." I didn't go back. The next night I drove an hour east and checked into a women's shelter. I couldn't bear the thought of sleeping alone, of waking to the sound of footsteps in an empty hallway. The shelter was different. Warm lights, doors that stayed locked, women who didn't look through you when you spoke. They had therapy circles, job leads, quiet kitchens where strangers became friends over instant coffee. Many of them carried heavier stories than mine. But as we talked, I kept hearing the same line, echoed in different voices. "You're not what I expected." Nearly all of them had heard it once. Nearly all of them had ignored it. Predators don't always look dangerous. They can smile too warmly. They can speak softly, politely. They can sound like help when really they're hunting. I learned something simple at that shelter, something I repeat to myself when doubt creeps in. Trust your gut, not the script people recite to make you feel safe. Protect your boundaries, even if it makes you seem cold, even if someone insists you're being rude. You don't owe strangers comfort, not in quiet hallways, not at night, not when the doors are already unlocked. They say when you hit rock bottom, you bounce back. People love to say that. But it isn't true. There's no bounce, no spring, no second wind waiting for you. There's only the fall, the brutal stop at the bottom, and the silence that comes after. For me, that silence started 3 years ago. I'd been drinking, again, before going to pick up my daughter from school. I never made it there. A flat tire on Central Avenue stopped me before she could see me like that. The cops found me in the parking lot anyway, slumped over the wheel while the pickup idled, the seat soaked in spilled vodka. Her little backpack was in the back seat, waiting. I haven't seen her since. The court stripped me of custody. Serena, her mother, made sure the last scraps of my reputation burned with it. And me? I took the night shift at a Family Dollar on the edge of Albuquerque, where the city fades into dust, stray dogs, and endless wind. It wasn't glamorous. I sat in the back office staring at a wall of half-dead monitors that flickered with static, each one stained by the memory of cigarette smoke and too many years of neglect. Still, it was something. The job didn't pry into my past, it didn't judge me. It just needed me awake and watching. I'd been sober 16 months by then. People talk about recovery like it's a victory march. Truth is, the craving never leaves. It waits, like a shadow trailing you down every street. Nights were the worst. Just me, the hum of tired fluorescent lights, and thoughts I didn't want to think. That Sunday night in May started like any other. I clocked in just before midnight, ate a stale sandwich in the break room, then made the usual rounds. Checked locks, punched up the cameras. Around 1:30, I stepped out back for a smoke. The desert wind was sharp and dry, carrying that low whistle that tells you a dust storm isn't far off. I welcomed it. The wind didn't care what I'd done, didn't care who I used to be. I was halfway through my cigarette when I noticed them. 2 cars parked deep in the back lot where the store lights couldn't reach. A white SUV, a silver sedan, both engines cold. 3 men stood around the open trunk of the SUV. One sparked a lighter, cigarette tip glowing red in the dark. Another bent into the trunk and pulled something out. Something heavy, awkward. I figured it was just another late-night deal. We got that sometimes, shady business in the lot. Usually over quick, usually none of mine to worry about. But this wasn't the usual. One man shoved another hard enough that I heard the thud from where I stood. Their voices cut sharp through the wind, angry, raw. Then it happened. A short, violent motion, too fast to register at first, and one of them crumpled. Not staggered, not tripped, just dropped, like a puppet with its strings cut. My heart slammed in my chest. The cigarette slipped from my mouth and hissed on the pavement. One man froze in place, looking around like a cornered animal. Another bolted for the sedan. My body moved before my brain caught up. I spun and sprinted back inside, breath ragged. The radios were dead. My backup had bailed early, again. My hands shook as I fumbled with the phone and punched 911. I think I just saw a stabbing. Maybe a murder, I blurted. Family Dollar, Central Avenue. 2 cars. White SUV, silver sedan. Please. My voice cracked, and I knew I sounded drunk even though I wasn't. By the time the words left my mouth, it was already too late. The police arrived fast, red and blue lights bouncing against the dusty storefront. I stood out front, waving them through with hands I couldn't steady. They swept the lot. No body. Just the SUV with its trunk still yawning open. Inside was chaos, dark smears staining the lining. A streak of blood dragged along the bumper like something heavy had been pulled out in a rush. The silver sedan was long gone. Inside, I led them to the office and pulled up the camera feed. I knew before it even loaded that it wouldn't help. The system lagged. The grain was so thick it blurred shapes into shadows, and the one streetlight that might have lit the back lot had gone dark 2 nights earlier. Nobody had come to fix it. On the monitor, all you could see were half-formed figures moving through black. A lunge, a collapse, then nothing. Just darkness swallowing the screen. The officer next to me let out a slow breath. You didn't see their faces? I shook my head. Too far, too dark. You sure the guy didn't just pass out or something? His tone was casual, like he wanted to believe that. I stared at him. No, he didn't pass out. He dropped. That was different. Something hit deep. He scribbled notes, nodding like he'd heard it all before, but his eyes said the same thing I already knew. They didn't have much to go on. They dusted the SUV, lifting smudged prints from the doors and bagging what scraps of evidence they could. One crumpled latex glove, a cigarette butt ground flat into the asphalt. An officer muttered it might have been gang-related. Maybe a deal gone wrong. Maybe something personal. That was all they gave me. And that was the last I heard. For days afterward, I replayed it in my head. Not the stabbing itself, but the silence. That was what stuck. No scream, no struggle, Just the dry hiss of desert wind as a man fell like it didn't matter, like the universe had already forgotten him before he hit the ground. That silence crawled under my skin. I didn't go back the next night. Told my supervisor I needed a day. He gave me one. I took 2. By Thursday, I sat staring at the uniform on the chair beside my bed. The patched sleeves, the faded name tag, the polyester collar that always smelled faintly of burnt coffee. I couldn't make myself put it on, couldn't step back into that store. They left voicemails, voices softened with sympathy. Said they understood, said there was an employee assistance program. I never called back. Instead, I sat in my apartment with the blinds half shut. No TV, no music, nothing but the wind pressing at the windows, and the heavy quiet that came with having seen something you couldn't undo. It wasn't just the crime, it was the helplessness. I'd spent years trying to rebuild, trying to claw back a life I'd shattered, trying to prove to my daughter, to myself, that I wasn't some washed-up drunk with nothing but excuses. But when it mattered, when something real and violent unfolded in front of me, I froze. I ran. And that broke something in me all over again. By the end of the month, I left Albuquerque, packed what little I owned into the bed of my truck and drove until the city shrank in the mirror. I found a small town just outside Los Lunas, a roadside motel with peeling paint and a neon sign that buzzed louder than it glowed. The manager, Darren, didn't ask questions, just handed me a mop and said the lobby floors had to shine before sunrise. That was enough. No cameras, no night shifts staring at shadows, no reminders. Sometimes, though, I still see that man in the lot. I wonder who he was. Wonder if anyone missed him, or if he was already the kind of soul the world loses track of. I'll never know, and maybe I don't want to. For months, I carried Officer Ramirez's card tucked inside my wallet, waiting for a call that never came. The case disappeared into some file box, just another unsolved night behind a dollar store no one thinks about. Now, I clean floors. I watch the desert sky bleed from black to orange in the mornings. I sit in church basements on Tuesday nights at AA, say my daughter's name when no one is listening. I've been sober a year and 9 months. It's not the kind of victory people clap for, but it's mine. It belongs to the ones who know how hard it is to crawl back from the dark. Some nights, I still see the SUV's trunk, still hear the wind, still watch that man collapse over and over, the moment frozen just before he hits the ground. Not because I want to, but because I was there, and silence leaves a mark. People talk about trauma like it's an explosion, loud and violent. Sometimes it's quieter than that. Sometimes it's just a whisper that seeps into your bones and changes how you hear the world forever. I don't miss Albuquerque. I don't miss the job. But I do miss the version of myself that believed starting over could mean starting clean, without scars. That part's gone. What I have left is sobriety. Mornings. Small victories that nobody sees but me. Evil doesn't always roar. Sometimes it slips by quiet, just beyond the reach of light. And the test isn't what you witness, it's what you do with it afterward. Witnessing something awful can crack you in half, but it can also wake you up. Maybe the bravest choices aren't dramatic. Maybe they're the smallest ones. Staying sober, staying alive, showing up again tomorrow. I never set out to be the kind of man who carried a secret for decades, but some stories don't stay buried. They rot inside you, and speaking them aloud feels like tearing open a wound that never closed. My name is Kellen Price. I spent over 30 years with the Texas Rangers. I've seen men butcher families for a pocket of cash, mothers betray their children, minds so twisted I still can't comprehend them. I've hunted the worst of the worst, and yet, nothing kept me up at night like the case of the Talbots at Willow Lake Motel. It was the only case I never filed, never spoke of, never let see daylight, until now. The Willow Lake Motel sat off a lonely, dust-choked stretch of Highway 82 outside the town of Locke. The cabins leaned into each other like warped wooden tombstones baking under the Texas sun. Weather-beaten boards, broken gutters, grass yellowed to straw. The kind of place you could drive by without a second glance, unless you noticed the flyers on the bulletin board at the grocery store downtown. Faces, names, people gone missing, paper edges curling in the heat, tacked up so long they looked like wallpaper. I was transferred to Cochran County in early '93. Bank robberies were shifting west, and the outlaws who slipped the net needed hideouts far from prying eyes. Motels like Willow Lake became prime stops. That's how it landed on my radar. In small towns, gossip works faster than police radio. Everybody knows who bought a new truck, who had an affair, whose dog wandered loose. But Willow Lake was different. The stories I heard weren't consistent, just fleeting sightings. A stranger checked in, and within days they were gone. No car pulling out, no forwarding address. Just vanished. The sheriff wrote them off as drifters, loners no one would miss. But I couldn't shake the feeling something was nesting under those sagging roofs, something the townsfolk had learned not to look at directly. The first time I met Reed Talbot, I remember how easily he disarmed me. A graying man with soft blue eyes that carried a weight behind them, like someone who'd seen hard winters but kept his smile anyway. His wife, Norma, wore a faded floral dress that looked like it had lived through decades of Texas summers. She greeted me with coffee, steam curling into the dry air. They talked in kind, measured tones. Hospitality so warm it almost forced you to lower your guard. But beneath Reed's chuckle, beneath Norma's practiced smile, there was a flicker of something I couldn't name. Cold, hollow. Ranger's instinct, call it. The kind that raises the hair on your arms when everything looks fine but your gut tells you otherwise. The story I'm about to lay out, the miles of surveillance tape, the subtle lies, the tipping points that pushed me to set a sting. It isn't the kind of horror you see in paperbacks. It's quieter, deadlier, the kind that hides in plain sight, dressed in hospitality and everyday clothes. That silence, those lost souls nobody claimed, nobody missed, is what stings even now. So let me take you back to the beginning. A late summer afternoon, sun burning low on the horizon, when I first pulled into Willow Lake's gravel drive. It was 4:45 p.m. The motel sign still clung to life with peeling paint and the word vacancy buzzing faintly, though only 2 cabins showed signs of being occupied. I parked my cruiser by the office, dust settling in the hot air, and spotted Norma rocking on the porch. She raised a hand, coffee mug steady, her smile polite, but her eyes sharp with something unreadable. "Afternoon, ma'am," I called as I stepped out. "Afternoon, Ranger," she answered, rising slowly. The boards groaned beneath her weight as she brushed invisible dust from her dress. Inside, the office smelled like mildew and old coffee grounds. The walls were lined with faded brochures, theme parks closed a decade ago, banks advertising loan rates from the '80s. Reed hovered near the doorway, posture casual but eyes fixed on me. "We always keep a clean business," he said, voice smooth, rehearsed. "No trouble here. Guests come, sleep, leave." I studied him. "Problem is, folks don't always leave. Some go missing around here. Drifters sure, but patterns don't lie." Norma spoke up, tone light as though she were commenting on the weather. "Storm last week blew papers right out the window. If you're looking for logs, they're probably floating in the lake by now." I smiled thinly, but inside, alarm bells were ringing. Their evasiveness was too polished. They'd rehearsed this. When I left, the road stretched out empty, cicadas humming loud enough to rattle your skull. Heat pressed against the windshield. I told myself I'd need more than instinct to pin them. I'd need proof, hard evidence, and patience. That night, behind those motel walls, Reed and Norma sat across from each other in their small kitchen. He lit a cigarette, smoke curling against the dim light. She brushed her hair back, a motion too graceful, too practiced, like she'd done it to calm him before. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. He reached across the table and brushed his fingers against hers. It was like watching lightning trapped inside a thundercloud, quiet, contained, but threatening to break loose. In that moment, I understood the truth I'd been circling. The missing folks weren't lost to chance or bad luck. Mark Williamson was my in. 32 years old, wiry frame, crooked smile that never fully reached his eyes. He smelled of stale smoke layered over sweat. Ordinary in every way. Perfect. I brought him into the ranger office one morning with a borrowed briefcase marked Pennsylvania Bureau, a duffel bag stuffed with thrift store clothes, and an empty wallet. His cover was simple, a runaway drifting west, chasing nowhere. He checked into cabin 6 under the name Mark Hill. Norma greeted him like a mother finding a long-lost son. She ladled hot stew before his bag hit the floor, poured him iced tea like she'd been waiting. Reed carried out bowls, chuckling warmly, shaking Mark's hand. I sat across the dirt lane in my cruiser, pretending to write notes but really watching their every move. Twilight settled purple along the roof lines, cicadas shrieking in the heat. It almost looked like family. 2 days in, Mark radioed. "It's cozy, boss, real nice, too nice." His voice crackled uneasy. I told him to keep his head down, play along. The silence that followed said more than the words. Night 3, just before midnight, the radio came alive again. His whisper was sharp, rushed. "They're not hiding criminals, they're collecting them." Then the line went dead. My stomach dropped. Within minutes, we had half a dozen rangers and deputies barreling toward Willow Lake. Spotlights cut across the cabins, sirens lit the trees in red and blue. Norma opened the door. Her face was pinched, but her eyes were steady, too steady. Reed lingered behind her, jaw clenched, watching everything. We moved on cabin 6. The lock had been changed, windows nailed shut. We splintered the door and rushed in. Mark lay on the floor, a ragged towel wrapped around his head. His eyes were wide, terrified, but he was breathing, weak but alive. Relief hit hard, but it didn't last. Reed had slipped toward the back. We followed his path to the maintenance shed, its hinges orange with rust, a fine coat of dust pretending it hadn't been touched in years. But the door groaned open, revealing stairs sinking into darkness. The air turned cold as we descended, the smell of mildew and rot pressing against us. Flashlights carved through the underground chamber. The beam caught what I'll never forget. 4 bodies in varying states of decay. Skeletal, bloated, left like offerings. Above them, a sheet of plywood pinned with scrawled handwriting in red ink. Names, dates, reasons. One read, "Armed robbery, 6/12/92. Another, burglary, 9/8/92. Crude stars beneath each. And at the bottom of them all, one word, guilty. At the top of the stairs, Reed stood frozen, pale. His throat worked around words before they came out, low and steady. "You understand. We judged them." Norma appeared beside him, eyes hollow, emptied of warmth. "The system failed," she said softly. "They slipped through the cracks. We gave them justice." Justice. That's what they called it. I stared at the plywood verdicts, at the nameless dead rotting below our feet. "Justice isn't yours to take," I muttered, my voice barely audible over the sirens clawing through the night above. Mark whimpered behind me, a broken sound that filled the silence. We cuffed Reed and Norma right there in the dirt, while Mark shivered in shock. Later, in interrogation, I sat across from Reed. Fluorescence buzzed overhead. I slid a photo of the shed across the table. "Your plan depended on killing people nobody would miss." His gaze flickered to the photo, then back to me. "They were criminals," he said flatly. "It wasn't murder. It was conviction. They were drifters, throwaways. That spot, they'd be gone anyway." His voice held no remorse, just belief. Norma broke first, confessing in calm tones. "Reed started it," she told us. "He denied it, said it was her idea. She swore she was following his lead, back and forth, drowning each other in blame. They were both convicted. Norma died of a heart attack after 2 years inside. Reed lasted 3 before someone beat him to death in the yard. Neither left a legacy but horror. Their victims, unclaimed, unremembered, were buried under John Doe markers. 4 lost souls, never spoken for. I left the Rangers not long after. Couldn't stand the quiet anymore. Couldn't stand mornings without the hum of the next case, the next chase. Too much room for silence, too much room for memory. Even now, I wake at 2 a.m., sweat slick on my face seeing that trapdoor, hearing Reed's voice. We judged them. The motel itself burned in '98. Arson, most likely. Locals wanting to erase the stain. Now it's just fenced land. Weeds swallowing the gravel. No sign, no plaque, no memory. But I see it. I see those faces. I remember the silence that let them die unnoticed. The silence that told the Talbots nobody would care. That's the real horror. Evil doesn't need monsters. It doesn't even need rage. It needs silence. It needs people willing to look away because the missing weren't their neighbors, their kin, their kind. Evil can wear a warm smile and pour you a glass of iced tea. Hospitality isn't proof of kindness, and friendliness isn't proof of good. When society overlooks the forgotten, the drifters, the transient, the invisible, it leaves cracks wide enough for horror to take root. The lesson is simple, but it cuts deep. Every life carries dignity, even the ones easiest to ignore. It's our duty to defend the unheard, to give voice to the unseen, and to never let silence be the soil where cruelty grows. Because once you choose silence, you become part of it. You become complicit. And by then, it's too late.